This is 22 CF 3192 State versus Camden Barnum, bond hearing.
I may approach, Judge.
Did you want to use them in your presentation, or?
Not in a presentation, Judge, just it's testimony from Mr. Barnum as well as argument, Judge.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, Tim Gibbs on behalf of Camden Barnum, 22 CF 3192. Judge, we're here for a motion to reduce bond. Currently, Mr. Barnum is charged with second-degree murder of his wife, Ms. Rictatia Barnum. He currently has a $500,000 cash professional bond. The state did previously file a motion for pretrial detention, which this court denied, and instead imposed that $500,000 cash professional bond. Mr. Barnum is unable to make that bond today, Judge. I believe he would be able to make anywhere from a $15,000 to $20,000 cash professional bond with pretrial supervision. He's lived in this area, Judge. For a few years, he was stationed here as part of his duties with the Army. He was a staff sergeant in the Army, had a top secret security clearance, and was stationed here in Crestview to work with the 7th Special Forces Group. Essentially, Judge, the information that we wanted to mostly present dealing with the weight of the evidence, the nature and circumstances of the offense charged, his family ties, his past and present conduct, and then, of course, whether he presents a danger to the community. The reports that we provided show 3 prior incidents where he actually called law enforcement, just similar to the time this time, unfortunately, where his wife did pass away. There are 3 prior incidents where he contacted law enforcement due to his wife's behavior. In fact, there was an incident in October of 2022 where his wife actually pointed a gun at him. While she was never charged, it was documented by Crestview Police. I'm happy to have Mr. Barnum testify more about those incidents as well so the court can have a clearer picture.
Oh. I'm reading some of your exhibits that you just handed me. It deals with past domestic violence issues, I believe.
It does, Your Honor. Mr. Barnum is the one who called law enforcement on each of those incidents based on behavior and actions done by his late wife, Ms. Rictatia Barnum.
Well, okay, well, go ahead.
Your Honor, then I'd call Mr. Barnum to the stand.
Ms. Davis?
I do want to make, as far as the pretrial detention motion goes, I don't think that that was ever actually denied. I think it was never set for a hearing because Mr. Barnum was unable to meet the bond that had been set. So we had not set it for hearing. There was a senior judge that was filling in at that point, so we didn't set it.
Well, the issue with the pretrial detention is basically no bond, as I understand it, and he's been given a bond, so I guess this is a bond reduction hearing.
That's what we're asking, Judge.
All right. And so you want to put your client on the stand? No, no.
I do, Your Honor, to give some details about the exhibits that you've just been handed.
Well, the issue is flight risk or danger to the community, correct?
So my understanding, Judge, he's going to be living with his aunt while his aunt does live out of town. She does live within Florida. She lives near the Tampa Bay area. His aunt has been in very, very constant communication with our office. Mr. Barnum is also very, very invested in working through this case and making sure that the case is resolved as quickly as we can. Otherwise, I believe there are a few more depositions, last-minute depositions we'll need to finish. I don't believe that he is a flight risk, Judge. The conversations that he and I have had about the case and the things that we need to do, any other experts we need to hire as far as potentially going to a trial, Mr. Barnum doesn't really have anywhere to go. He has since been discharged for the military, and he would be living with his aunt again, who has had constant communication, or has at least contacted our office on a very constant base, or a very regular basis. We've provided her information. I don't believe that he would be a flight risk. She is also very invested in seeing this case come to a favorable resolution.
Has he got a prior criminal record?
Not that I'm aware, Judge. However, I do note on one of those prior incidents, he may have been charged. However, I'm not aware personally of any prior history that Mr. Barnum has, certainly not within the state of Florida. I don't have the same access that the state does
Was he
for
in
that.
the Army when this happened?
He was, Your Honor, since this incident occurred in December of 2022, December 28th, 2022, the Army has since discharged him, in part at least, due to these allegations.
He's charged with second-degree murder, I guess, correct?
He is, Your Honor.
That's it?
Yes, Your Honor.
What does the state say?
Judge, it's secondary murder with a firearm. So it'd be a minimum.
Minimum mandatory 25? Yeah, that's, yeah.
There was also some other things that the defense had provided to us regarding his mental history. That's something that Your Honor can take into account and to lower the bond at this point. I guess bottom line is the state definitely opposes lowering this defendant's bond. I've spoken to the mother of the victim. She had planned to try to appear via Zoom today. She does not live in the local area, but she also very much opposes this bond.
Have you had a chance to see these exhibits Mr. Gibbs has just handed me?
Yes, Judge. I have. I think what those demonstrate is a history of both of the victim and the defendant having fights with each other. There's even one instance where the defendant stands in front of the victim's car as she's trying to leave from a fight that's occurring. Now, in this case, the crime scene seems to indicate that, again, he was in between the victim and an exit from the room that they were in at the time that he shot her.
And if I may respond to that, Judge, that prior incident the state referenced as far as him standing in front of the alleged victim's car, Ms. Barnum's car, she also ran him over in that same incident. Another prior incident that the state mentioned as far as him being in between her and the exit in this room, the medical examiner testified that 3 bullets entered Ms. Barnum's body. They entered in very different areas. 1 bullet entered her belly on one side and exited the other. 1 bullet entered her left hip and exited her left buttock. The 3rd bullet entered her chest and pierced her chest, her heart, her lungs, her pericardium, and entered out of her back. Those are 3 very different angles where essentially this was a struggle over a gun. Both of them had firearms. Both of them knew how to use their firearms safely. Both of them struggled for that firearm. That's what we believe happened. Again, I'm happy to have Mr. Barnum testify to
Well,
that.
I'm a little concerned about him testifying. He may lock himself into something that could be used against him in a trial. He may have a valid defense. He may have he may be found guilty, may be found not guilty.
And if I may reference the photos that we submitted, that room that you see there, that is a space in the house known as a man cave. That is a space that Mr. Barnum would find himself in solitude to have his own personal time. The door to that room had been damaged and had been hit so much, so frequently.
Look, he's got. It seems like he's got insufficient contacts with the Okaloosa County. This is a minimum mandatory 25 years. There's a potential flight risk. He may win at trial. I don't know, but I'm not going to lower the bond on a murder case with a minimum mandatory 25 years and that few contacts with Okaloosa County.
Very well, Judge.
I'm leaving the bond at 500,000. Here's your exhibits unless you want to introduce them. All right. Thank you.
Judge, I have nothing further.
All right, thank you. We'll put him on April, what about June 24th?
Judge, he's already, I think, on the April cycle. We can leave him on that.
All right, April,
That way we keep tracking him.
I think we'd only set him for today. We had not officially continued him after today's court date.
I think you're right, yes. April 22nd for pretrial, please, Judge.
April 24th. 24th, April 24th. I'm sorry. I meant June 24th.
You want to set it on June 24th?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be ready for trial in a month, are you?
I do not think that we would be ready at the April cycle, but I wanted to leave it on there at least to track it so we could keep updated with it.
All right, well, April 22nd then.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Mr. Bullabo.
Yes, Your Honor.
This is a VOP evidentiary hearing, I believe.
It is, Your Honor.
Okay.
I can proceed to call probation officer Vicky Attaway.
All right, thank you.
Oops, sorry.
Would you please raise your right hand to be sworn? You swear the testimony you give before this court's the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Have a seat.
Please state your name for the record.
Vicky Attaway, Attaway.
Where are you employed?
I'm with the Florida Department of Corrections,
How long have you been employed with the Florida Department of Correction?
20 years.
What are your duties as a probation officer?
At the time that I was supervising Mr. Billabo, my responsibilities were to supervise high-risk sex offenders, conditional release, and addiction recovery release cases.
Where was the location of your job at the time?
I worked at the 015 Pensacola Fairfield Drive at probation office.
Now, officer, do you see the defendant in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you point to him and describe an article of clothing he's wearing, please?
He is wearing a green jumpsuit.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
All right, it reflects.
Now, how long has Mr. Bullaboy been on probation?
Well, Mr. Billabo wasn't on probation for, well, how do you mean, like overall, or?
Let me rephrase the question. According to your records, how many times Mr. Bullaboy has violated probation?
Oh, he's violated multiple times.
When was he first placed on probation?
The most recent one I have is a 2021 case, two 2021 cases.
And you can, I guess, yeah, consult your record.
Thank you.
He was placed originally on probation on November 7, 2022.
That is correct.
Now, when a probationer starts probation, what are the steps that are taken by your office in educating him about the requirements and everything else involved?
When an offender reports to the probation office, once they're on probation, they're instructed on the terms and conditions of their supervision. There are general terms and conditions of supervision. They have special court-ordered conditions of supervision. In sex offender cases, they have certain standard required conditions that they have to comply with based on the statute for which they have been charged under. And then again, community control has their own certain standard conditions, therefore.
Now, based on your records, are you aware if Mr. Bullaboy was informed about the requirements?
He was informed of the requirements of supervision. He was instructed on his conditions of supervision by Malcolm Harris on November 16th, 2022. That's when he signed his certified orders.
After he signed those orders, when was the first time he violated probation?
The first time he violated probation, I submitted a violation report on, the first one was February 22nd of 2023. I therefore additionally submitted an addendum to the violation report on July 24th, 2023.
And could you say the grounds that he violated?
Yes, he violated his supervision by changing his residence without permission and absconding. He failed to report weekly for his community control. He failed to abide by his curfew. He failed to attend the Reentry Alliance program, and he failed to comply with electronic monitoring.
Were all those conditions reduced to writing? Were they in writing? Did he read? Was he able to read?
Yes, they were all on his certified orders of supervision.
Did he also have to sign any document acknowledging that he understood those requirements?
Yes.
Do you know when he signed that document attesting he was understanding?
I don't have that information, no. Oh, let me look a little bit further. Yes, I'm sorry. He was modified to community control on January 31st of 2023. And he signed a non-certified set of modification orders on February 1st of 2023.
What were the conditions, the requirements of this very last term of probation?
The modification ordered him to attend and complete the Reentry Alliance Pensacola, that he was required to report to the REAP program, and that he must be fitted with GPS prior to release from county jail.
So could you please tell the court what happened when he was released from jail? GPS was applied. What was he supposed to do then?
When he was released in jail, the Crestview Probation Office transferred his case to Pensacola because that's where the Reentry Alliance program is located. That's what his case was assigned to me. And that happened on February 1st.
And where was he residing prior to entering the program?
Prior to entering the program, he was residing in the county jail, but prior to that, from what I understand or what has been shared with me, was that he was homeless on the street.
In Pensacola?
No, in Crestview.
Once he arrived in Pensacola, did he go to the program?
He did.
And when was he admitted?
He was admitted February 20th. No, I'm sorry, the date that, February 20th is the date that I spoke with the REAP program. February 1st, he was admitted.
And what information did you gather from the REAP program?
I was contacted by his case manager at the REAP program, stating that they were requesting that Mr. Bullaboy go to Baptist emergency room to be evaluated for a psychological evaluation to determine whether or not he qualified under a Baker Act.
So did he go there?
GPS points indicate that he was at Baptist Hospital. Conversation that I had with the crisis stabilization unit through Baptist was that they said that Mr. Bulabo was brought to the hospital by ambulance at approximately 7:30 the prior evening, but had signed himself out AMA.
And what does that mean?
That means that he left without medical advice, or against medical advice.
Now, in the meantime, you said he had a GPS applied.
That's correct.
Were you receiving information as to his location from the GPS?
I was until such time as the GPS equipment entered what's called an unable to connect, which means the GPS is having difficulty speaking with the cell tower to identify the exact location of where the offender is.
During this period of time, was he in contact with you or the probation office?
The last contact I had with him was on February 20th, where he called me and said that he was riding his bike to the probation office. This was after I had a conversation with the case manager from REAP. I asked him why was he coming to the probation office when he was asked to go to Baptist Hospital to receive an evaluation. He told me that that's what he wanted to do. I instructed him that it would be a good idea for him to go ahead and go to Baptist Hospital and get that said evaluation and then come see me.
After he left the hospital on his own, did he contact you?
I didn't receive, after that phone conversation, I had no additional telephone conversation with Mr. Bulabo. He did come to the attention of our on-call officer due to a home alarm. Their GPS points were located at Baptist Hospital. My on-call staff went out to Baptist Hospital. They spoke with the ER people. They advised him that Mr. Bulabo was not in the ER. He attempted to speak with Baptist Behavioral. They would not advise him as to whether or not Mr. Bulabo was a patient. And he also tried the crisis stabilization unit. And at that point, the alarm was referred to me the following morning.
Did you go in search for the offender at the time you weren't able to get in contact with him?
When initially I reported to the office and his points indicated that he was at Baptist Hospital, I made several phone calls to Baptist Behavioral. They would not tell me whether or not Mr. Bulabo was a patient at that time. I also called the crisis stabilization unit at Baptist Hospital. They would not tell me whether or not he was a patient. It wasn't until the unable to connect alarm occurred that I again reached out to both of those, and it was the crisis stabilization unit who advised me that he had been brought to the hospital, but that he had left under AMA.
When did you get a hold of him?
I never speak to him after I did not speak to him again after February 20th.
What were the circumstances of his arrest for this violation of probation?
I received notification from the Mobile Metro Jail on March 6th that Mr. Bulabo was incarcerated in their correctional facility.
As part of his requirements, was he allowed to leave the state without permission?
No, he was not.
Did he ask you permission to go to Alabama?
No, he did not.
As far as the reporting, his reporting is concerned, how often was he supposed to report to probation?
Mr. Bulabo was on community control, therefore he was required to report to the probation office one time per week. When I was supervising cases, my reporting date was Tuesday, and I took reports all day on that day.
Did he comply with that requirement?
He did up until the time then he was instructed to go to the Baptist Behavioral and/or Baptist ER. After that, I never saw him again until I received notification from the Mobile Metro Jail that he was incarcerated.
How about his curfew? Did he have a curfew?
He did. That's part of his regular standard conditions of sex offender probation.
Did he abide by the curfew requirements?
He did up until the time that he became an absconder from supervision. Once he became an absconder from supervision, since he was no longer residing at the address that he reported, he was now not abiding by his curfew because he was not contained to the residence for which he was supposed to be at.
And you mentioned before that one of the requirements was to attend and complete the REAP program. Did he
Yes.
do that?
No, he didn't, because once they instructed him to go get that evaluation and he absconded, they discharged him from the program.
Now, you said he had the GPS, electronic monitoring. Did he comply with the requirements of the electronic monitoring?
He did until the device went into and unable to connect, and we were no longer able to communicate with the equipment, and we were unable to retrieve the equipment.
Now, officer, just to keep things into perspective, when was he placed on probation for this last term that we're here for?
His modification occurred on January 31st of 2023.
So when did you have information that he absconded, you couldn't find him anymore?
That was on February 20th.
So basically less than a month.
That's correct.
So when I asked you if he complied with the requirements of reporting weekly, he only had to do it, what, once or twice maybe?
Yeah, he reported 2 times for his community control requirements, and then after that, he absconded supervision, so therefore he never reported again.
So is he considered an absconder for probation?
That's correct.
Do you think Mr. Bullaboy is amenable to supervision?
I do not.
And what are the reasons for your opinion?
I believe Mr. Bullabo wants to do what Mr. Bullabo wants to do.
Objection, opinion, testimony.
Does he seem to listen? I withdraw that question. Does he seem to follow the instructions?
Initially, he did, until February 20th, when he decided that he did not want to follow the rules or the instructions of REAP to go get the mental health evaluation.
Speculation, Judge. She says he decided that she doesn't know that for sure, Judge.
Okay. Officer, you're aware this is the 3rd time of a form of violation of probation for this offender, correct?
Yes.
So are you familiar with the previous times?
I am not. I only supervised Mr. Bullabo for that short period of time, from the time that he entered the Reentry Alliance until his absconding.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Mr. Gibbs?
Officer, how long did you say you were a probation officer for?
I've been a probation officer for 20 years.
How long were you in Pensacola?
Probably 18 of those 20 years, 19 of those 20 years, well, between Santa Rosa and Escambia County.
Did you transfer out of Pensacola recently?
I did. I was promoted to a supervisor position here in Crestview,
When did that happen?
August of 2023,
How long were you Mr. Bullaboy's officer?
for less than a month.
Less than a month? We talked about earlier he had to be at REAP. How many violations in your experience, in your time at Pensacola, how many violations stem from people leaving REAP?
Not too many are the results of people leaving REAP. Based on my experience as a high-risk specialist, a good portion of our violations come from electronic monitoring violations.
Do a lot of those happen by accident?
Yes and no, okay? There are certain alarms that an officer may get to investigate where it is 100% not the offender's fault. There are other ones that it's 99.99% their fault, depending on the type of alarm that we get and the behaviors that the offender has previously displayed.
So what alarm did you get from Mr. Bullaboy?
And unable to connect.
So that could just be that it ran out of signal, right?
It's unlikely that it ran out of signal. Now, if you're asking me, did it shut down? Ultimately, it did because it wasn't charged.
Right. And you said earlier you never found the device?
I did not.
So you don't know for certain what happened to it, how it came off of his person, correct?
I don't.
Okay. And you said earlier that REAP wanted him to go Baker Act himself?
REAP wanted him to receive an evaluation.
Did they say why?
They communicated to me that Mr. Billabo had been communicating to them incidences that other people in the house had not been experiencing. For example, there were alleged incidences of visual hallucinations that Mr. Billabo reported to REAP, but that other members of the house did not, or said did not happen.
How long has REAP been in, how long has REAP been around?
Well, at least 6 years, because I became a high-risk specialist, 7 years. I was a high-risk specialist for 6 years, and they've been around since I was a specialist.
Do they actually provide treatment for mental health or drugs?
They do not. They are not certified to do mental health treatment, nor are they able to do substance abuse treatment. They are simply a transitional housing program. They provide housing to homeless sex offenders or persons that have specific conditions with residency restrictions, that they have purchased homes to meet those restrictions so that someone has a place for a roof over their head.
It's like a halfway house.
Yes, we label it as a transitional housing program.
Right, I mean, that's an old colloquial term, right?
Right.
And I kind of asked you before how many violations you'd gotten from REAP. Do you know about, there are substantial reports that people have used drugs in REAP, have had mental health crises?
I'm not going to say that REAP is perfect, because they are absolutely not, okay? Yes, there are situations where offenders have chosen to use substances at REAP. REAP has always advised us, because they do their own drug testing. When they do their drug testing, their case managers call us and say, you need to pay attention to this person because we received a dirty urinalysis from them. They would typically regularly communicate with me because I was open to working with them in ensuring that our offenders got good care as well as they complied with the conditions of REAP.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier about Mr. Bulliboy going to Baptist Hospital there in Pensacola. You testified earlier that GPS said so and the hospital said so. Did you actually talk to Mr. Bulliboy at all on February 20th?
No, I spoke to him the day before. It was either on the 20th or it was on the 21st. I don't exactly remember which day he absconded supervision or which day I instructed him to go to the hospital. But that was the last communication that I had with him, was prior to the GPS alarm occurring on at the Baptist Hospital on the, I believe it was the 21st.
On the 21st of
I
February
believe
of last
so.
year? Okay. You're able to actually send messages and phone calls and stuff like that through that GPS device, correct?
I am.
Did you send him a message to go to REAP? Or
Unfortunately-
to go Baker Act himself?
No, I did not send that through the GPS equipment. That was a direct telephone conversation between Mr. Bullibo and myself. Now, Mr. Bullibo may have called me on his GPS device, but that was a one-to-one conversation. That was not messages that I sent to him through his GPS device.
And then you also mentioned earlier, so you don't know for sure that he actually went to the hospital, correct? You've been told that.
I made the presumption that he did go to the hospital based on two things. One, the GPS unit indicated that he was at the Baptist Hospital campus, and two, that the on-call officer had gone out to that campus but not seen him. Now, when I came in the next morning, again, I presumed that he was either in the Baptist stabilization unit and/or the Baptist behavioral, based on from the information that I received from the on-call officer from the prior evening.
And you testified earlier that he signed himself out against medical advice. Is that correct?
According to the information I received from the staff at the crisis stabilization unit, they were the only ones that would look up information for me to determine whether Mr. Bullibo was actually a patient and where I might find him. And their records indicated, and they told me that he signed himself out at 7:30 the prior evening against medical advice.
They send you any paperwork or anything like that where he
No.
actually signed or anything like
No.
that? So all they did was just tell you?
That's correct.
Okay. You also testified earlier that the GPS did have difficulty connecting, is that right?
That's the alarm that he went into that morning, wasn't unable to connect. Now, there could be a number of different reasons why the device went into and unable to connect, but that alarm is caused because it's having difficulty communicating with the cell tower. Now, again, we can get those alarms based on whether or not the offender is potentially in the hospital, okay? Because if he was in the hospital, it would be likely that I would get a no GPS alarm and/or an unable to connect alarm.
Because of the building?
That's correct.
Okay. Whenever you realized that his GPS, I mean, was there ever an alert that his GPS had been cut off or anything like that?
No, I never received a strap alarm indicating that he had cut his equipment. It went into an alarm. We went out there in an attempt to look for it and was unable to find it.
And the last place that the GPS had him located was actually at the hospital, wasn't it?
That's correct, on the campus of Baptist Hospital.
And maybe by a bus stop or something like that?
No, because actually the actual point, which can be, which can have like about an 8 to 10 foot diameter, was actually pointing at the dumpster area behind Baptist Hospital, or what appeared to be the dumpster area. Now, the officer and I that went out there, we scoured that whole area. And it,
All around Baptist Hospital?
no, only in the location where the GPS had last indicated that Mr. Bulabo may potentially be.
About how big of a radius did you put on that when you searched?
The entire diameter of that back unit of Baptist Hospital. So probably within 50 feet of the point where the equipment indicated that it might be.
Okay. Did you check his residence at REAP?
I did not personally check his residence. Mr. Wynn, who received the initial on-call call, did go to Mr. Bullabo's residence, and they said he was not there.
Where all else did you look?
I didn't look any further,
Did any other officers look anywhere?
not that I'm aware of.
So you checked near the hospital and, of course, his residence. That's where you believed he might be.
That's correct.
Okay. And then you only found out.
I mean, he went through with security. He went through the ER and around. So it's not like he just went to the hospital and they said he's not here. He went through the emergency room with security to ensure that Mr. Bullabo wasn't in the emergency room.
Mr. Wynn did, or Officer
That's
Wynn
correct.
did? Okay. When did Officer Wynn go to the hospital to check on him?
He received the alarm at 8:05 because we had adjusted his curfew. I don't have the specific time that Mr. Wynn was at the hospital.
Was it that same night or was it the next day?
It was that same night, because Mr. Wynn would have been responsible for actually physically going out to the location to try to find the offender.
To
if
try
he
to lay
wasn't-
to try to lay eyes on him?
Pardon me?
To try to lay eyes on him?
That's correct.
But you said that otherwise Mr. Bullaboy was compliant with all of his requirements up until this incident.
I mean, for the first month that I supervised him, that's the only amount of time that I supervised him, so.
Right. Do you know of his living situation prior to this? I think we said he was homeless, is that right?
He was homeless. I mean, he indicated to me that he was homeless in Crestview, that he was required to live in to stay at a cemetery prior to being released from, I don't know if it was prior to being released from jail or during prior terms before he was in jail, that he was made to live in a cemetery, that there were people who would make fun of him or harass him at the cemetery. This was before he got to REAP. I mean, he communicated those things to me. I believe them to be true because I had no reason not to believe that they weren't true.
Fair enough, all right. I think those are all my questions. Thank you, Officer.
Thank you. You can step down.
Thank you.
Next witness,
The state rep doesn't have any other witness.
Mr. Gibbs.
Mr. Bolivoy, Your Honor.
Okay.
He needs the assistance of a walker. I'm happy to do that
He can
here.
just stay right there.
Okay, we'll move the monitor, Judge, so you can see him. Your Honor, I call Mr. Bolivoy.
All right.
If we can swear him in,
Mr.
please.
Boulabo, would you please raise your right hand and be sworn? You swear the testimony you give for his course of truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Michael Anthony Bolivoy.
Were you supposed to be on community control for a charge of failure to register?
Yes, sir, I was.
When did you go on the most recent term of supervision?
I got locked up in 2021 for the charge. I took a plea bargain trying to get out of jail to go home to my family on like November the 7th of 2022.
So you heard the officer earlier testify about some violations she reported regarding you leaving REAP, not reporting when you were supposed to, violating curfew, and some issues with your GPS. So we're talking about February of last year. Did you go to the hospital?
Yes, sir, I did.
Why did you go to the hospital?
It started out where I was having some problems over here in the cemetery. The Crestview police came over there. I was confined to the cemetery on GPS monitoring. I had nowhere to go. I'm not from Florida. I'm from the state of Tennessee. GPS records will show that the Crestview police came out there and made me leave the cemetery due to people throwing beer bottles, rocks, and things of that nature.
So let's readjust. So the probation officer is saying that you went to the hospital in Pensacola and that you didn't go where you were supposed to after that. So why did you go to the hospital in Pensacola?
Well, the REAP house people came out there, the supervisor came out there and told me that I needed to go to Baptist Hospital to declare a Baker Act on myself. And I was like, at first I didn't
Do you know
understand.
why he said that?
Yes, sir, he said that because I think because of, like Miss Attaway was saying, that I told him that there was some threats being made and so forth, and they found out that I couldn't use my legs to weigh. And the day that I told him, I said, look, I can't be on my legs like I can, like you can. I said, I can't. They wanted me to walk to work 4 miles every day. They wanted me to stay on my feet 8 hours a day, and they wanted me to walk back to the REAP house 4 miles every evening.
Where were you working?
I was working at I started out at the Crown Laundry, and from the REAP house, it's like, I don't know, 6, maybe 7 miles, and that didn't work out. The lady said that if I wasn't there at 4 o'clock in the morning, that I couldn't go to work there. So I started working on down the street from there at the Job Labor Day Service thing, trying to find work down there. And
What's the issue with your legs?
my leg was crushed inside the jail. In the 2 years that I've been sitting in there, my leg got crushed. I've had 3 surgeries done on it, and they say that I'll never get the use of it back again. And they've given me an elective, what they call an elective decision, to have my leg cut off or leave it like it is.
So what happened at the hospital?
I went inside the hospital, and I stayed there for almost 2 days. The lady in the hospital said that I went to the window in the emergency room. I reported to the hospital myself. I rode a bicycle to the hospital as I was ordered to do, over the GPS monitor by Miss Attaway. Miss Attaway, I called her and told her I was coming to the probation office. And she asked me, she said, why are you coming here? I said, ma'am, I got to come and turn myself in. I don't have nowhere else to go. I told her that I was not declaring a Baker Act on myself because I was not suicidal. So she went on the GPS monitor. She told me bluntly that I needed to go to Baptist Hospital and declare a Baker Act on myself.
Have you ever had mental health concerns before?
Yes, sir, I have.
Have you ever been Baker Acted before?
No, sir, I have not.
Did you seek treatment for mental health problems before?
20-some years ago, I did, sir.
What for?
Bipolar disorder, paranoid schizophrenia.
Did you get a diagnosis for that?
They diagnosed me as a bipolar disorder, as a paranoid schizophrenic.
Are you supposed to be on medication?
Yes, sir, I was.
Are you on medication now?
No, sir, I am not. They actually, right now, they have me on a pill called Vistriol for my nerves because of me breaking out from having some kind of nervous thing going on.
So when did you leave the hospital?
About 2.5 days after I got there.
Where'd you go?
I kept checking. I went down a road called, I'm not from here. I don't know nothing about this place. I went down a road called 90, and when I got to where I was at, I realized that I was at Alabama. I was at the Alabama state line.
So you have no idea how you got to Mobile?
No, sir. I walked down the road.
You're saying you walked from Pensacola to Mobile, Alabama?
Yes, sir.
How long did it take you?
It took me approximately 3.5 days with a broke leg.
To walk that distance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What road did you walk? Do you remember?
I went down, I think, Highway 90, I believe.
From Pensacola to Mobile?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why Mobile arrested you?
Yes, sir, because I flagged the police down and I told the police what the deal was. I told him what I was going through, and he said they had a warrant for my arrest, and that Mr. Attaway and then went to Escambia County and took no charges on me.
What happened to your GPS monitor?
I give to the people at the doctor.
You gave it to the hospital?
Yes, sir. They had it. They had everything. I even left my bag of clothes because I couldn't carry them.
Did the hospital cut off your GPS monitor?
No, sir. It did not get cut off.
How did it get off of your leg?
It come off like a shoe. I gave him the box and pulled it off and gave it to him.
Did they request that you give it to them while they examined
I
you?
gave everything to him, everything I had.
So why didn't you try to go to the probation office after you left the hospital?
After that lady told me that, when I told her what, I went up to the window and asked her if she had anything for me that Miss Attaway had sent me there. And she said, Michael, we don't have nothing for you. I said, well, ma'am, they told me I need to declare a Baker Act. She said, do you even know what a Baker Act is? And I said, well, ma'am, I think it's got something to do with suicide. She said, are you suicidal? I said, no, ma'am, I'm not. She said, well, what was the problem? I said, well, probably because I was angry and probably because I was about half scared. I said, I told them that there was some things going on. I said, and they sent me up there. On the way there, when the lady said that they didn't have nothing for me, I repeatedly, and the GPS monitor will show that I called the head office, someone answered the phone from the main office of the directors of the GPS monitor. I called the main office. They told me to keep calling Miss Attaway. I rung that phone for 2 days straight, and nobody would answer me. So, to be honest, I done the one thing I know to do. I started home. I got a family. I got children. I got a wife.
Where do you have family?
My family's in Sweetwater, Tennessee. The GPS, the FDLE records, the TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, and the Granger County Sheriff's Department will all show that I have a registered address there. I came here to bury my aunt. I didn't come here to live. I got arrested on a charge for slapping somebody the morning I got here. I've been stuck here ever since.
So why did you never try to report to probation?
I didn't know where to go. She told me she asked me why was I coming there. So
The
I done
hospital
the
asked
one.
you that?
Yeah, Miss Attaway did. She asked me why was I reporting to the probation office.
Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you think we need to know regarding these allegations of violation of probation?
I want to go home with my family.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions, Judge.
I don't have any questions, Your Honor, for him.
All right,
I have no other witnesses, Judge. Thank you.
okay.
Yes, how do you want? So, Your Honor, even from the testimony of the defendant, it's clear that he violated probation. He wasn't supposed to be in Mobile, Alabama. And he also said that one of the reasons why he couldn't do the program is because he couldn't walk, but then he can walk to Mobile. That's weird. The standard for a VOP is the greater weight of the evidence. And I would ask the court to take judicial notice of the fact that he's on probation in case number 21 CF 2621 and 21 CF 2633, along with the warrant and affidavit that it's already in the court file and the whole probation file.
I don't
Defendant
have an
is a
objection to that, Judge.
Defendant is a violent felony offender of special concern for the sexual battery that caused him to be a registered sex offender. Now, what's very peculiar about this case is the fact that for being a sex offender and a sexual predator, he's supposed to register, as we all know.
Objection. When did he achieve sexual predator status?
when he committed the sexual battery.
He's listed as a sexual predator. I thought he was just a sexual offender.
I'm not sure about that, Your Honor. I withdraw that. He's a sex offender. He's supposed to, he's required to register. Those two cases that are here are for 3 counts total of failure to register. He was given 3 chances at probation. The first time he pled in November 7, 2022. By January 31st, he had already violated 2 times. This is the 3rd violation. Is not able to comply with the requirements, as the officer Attaway has testified. He was just simply asked to communicate with them, and he just disappeared. All the circumstances that he wants to claim happened to him, they cannot be validated and verified. The officer, as she testified under oath, went to the hospital personally, went to look for him, spoke with the general head nurse, and they stated that he left on his own the night before, and he was never to be found. He was only found when he was arrested in Mobile, Alabama, in Pensacola. The second time that his probation was modified after he violated, he agreed, and there was a colloquy, and it's part of the court record, where the court asked him if he understood that by pleading that time, he could have been sentenced to the suspended sentence. The only requirement, in addition, as a punishment last time, was that he completed the REAP program, the one that he didn't do. It was, as probation officer testified, he was on probation on this last term for like 20 days, and then he disappeared. Now, when it comes to a sex offender, the fact that, first of all, absconding is a substantial violation. Second, especially for a sex offender, the fact that he absconds and he's not able to comply with those requirements, it's very, very dangerous, because the community needs to know where he resides as being a sex offender. He just takes off, and it disregards all the rules and regulation. Now, at the time that he pled the first time, he scored close to 80 points, which is the suspended sentence that he agreed to. At this time, with the violations, he scored 99 months. And therefore, the 80 months suspended sentence would be the 3rd downward departure that he is afforded for really no good reason. I believe, Your Honor, that the court should impose an incarcerative sentence, and I would ask that the 80 months be imposed.
All right, Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we've heard testimony from Officer Attaway as well as Mr. Bulleboy himself regarding the allegations involving that he left the hospital, left the county, left the state, and issues with his GPS. First and foremost, Judge, again, the burden is on the state, greater weight of the evidence. We're also talking about, there is a lot of hearsay in this. Of course, hearsay is allowed, but the court can't rely on hearsay as a primary basis to find a violation. The court has to find that the violation was material and willful. Hearing the testimony from Mr. Bulleboy today, Judge, I don't believe that it was willful. He tried to comply. He went to the hospital at the request of REAP as well as the request of probation. He went to the hospital. He tried to Baker Act himself. He stayed there for 2.5 days. Eventually, his GPS unit died, it seems. And after he tried to go back to probation, his testimony today says that he was told, why would he go back to probation? So he did the only thing he knew how to do, and that was, well, if I can't go back to probation, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go home back to Tennessee. That's where he's trying to get. That's where he's been trying to get to ever since he was arrested on these charges in the first place. We heard testimony, too, that previously in Crestview he was homeless, having to live at a cemetery, also with GPS, also on community control sanctions at the time. He's been trying to comply, and it seems as though the world around him is unfortunately stacked against him in that regard. Regarding the proof that the state's offered, we have the testimony, of course, that he was ordered to go to the hospital, that he didn't report, and the issues with REAP, most of that is based on hearsay. We don't have, we don't have all of that as pure testimony. The court can't rely on that. We'd ask that the court find him not guilty because these violations weren't willful. He was trying to do the best that he could with the situation he found himself. He's just trying to get back to his family. We're asking the court to not find him in violation.
All right, well, based on the testimony of Mr. Bullabaw's probation officer and his own testimony, it appears that he has repeatedly violated his probation and I believe community control also. And I don't know why he could make it to Mobile but couldn't make it to his probation officer to check in. So the court finds that it's sympathetic to his situation, but a material willful violation, and the court has no option but to adjudicate him guilty and impose a 80-month Department of Corrections sentence, credit for time served, if any. Anything else?
If I may approach with the score sheet.
Concurrent, both cases.
Outstanding monies to collection.
Yep, outstanding monies to collections. All right, I hope you can make it back to Tennessee. I gave you concurrent time, so